Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Black Hat USA 2022. This is episode 2682 on SecurityGuideTV.com. I'm your host, Chuck Harrell. My next guest, Michael Oldham. He's the CEO and founder of PortSys.com. Mr. Michael, welcome back, my friend.
Thanks very much. Good to speak with you again, Chuck.
It is. We talked maybe 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago in Florida at that other physical security conference. It's where we met, and I'm glad to see we're back on the cyber side. Today we're going to talk about driving zero trust with next-gen secure reverse proxy. I had somebody speak to us about proxy this week, and I'm still trying to get my head around it, but it's a very clever approach to this. So let's talk about it. More and more employers are choosing to be remote. That's the new standard, right? At least 50% of them.
Sure.
Over returning to the office. So how can organizations go about quantifying the risk? I don't think anybody expected this. I know we're catching up to it, but I think beyond catching up, we have to come up with new solutions because I still have a Windows 7 computer right here, Michael. I will never change that computer because it works and I won't touch it, but it's vulnerable. So I don't keep it on the internet, right? And that's happening all around the country with people working from home. So let's talk about that. How are we going to quantify these risks with this work from home model?
Well, one of the biggest challenges that we have is that you're right. There are a lot of different kinds of devices, a lot of different ways that people are trying to get access to information. And we don't want to make it too difficult for the end users because it's a real challenge. You can't put in obstacles for people to do their jobs every day. They tend to get very irritated when that happens. So we've got to find ways to be able to make it as easy as possible for the end users. But at the same time, we have to make sure that it's secure for the organization. Our technology is really designed to use kind of proven concepts for a secure reverse proxy, effectively, where we're the arbiter of access. When an organization comes in and they use total access control, which is our product, they basically come in to the organization and they have to be vetted first, right at that spot. And it's using things like credentials. It could be username, password, or even passwordless, MultiFactor Authentication. But even more, where you're looking at the context of access. You're looking at the device, what the device security status is. You're looking at where they're coming in from. A lot of very important factors that really change what you want to do or could potentially change what you want to do for access control. So there are circumstances, somebody comes in and they're getting access to something that's not very secure priority. It could be HR announcements or other things that are very simple. If you're trying to get access to those, you don't need to have high levels of security. But if it's something that is, R&D information or financially sensitive or healthcare information, HIPAA protected information, those kinds of things, they're much more sensitive, and you want to make sure that you understand the circumstance. So what we do is we look at the user, we look at their context of access and everything about that session to determine whether that person should get access to these resources or not. We allow specific policies for each and every resource, whether they're local or cloud, wherever they happen to be, so that you can create the security requirements around each resources that you want. So instead of going out and managing the endpoints and worrying about whether that device is secure or not, you don't have to manage the device itself directly, but when that person requests access to the information that you're protecting, that total access control protects, you have the capability to determine if they meet those security requirements or not, right on the fly, dynamically. And if they don't meet it, they don't get access. And if they do, they can get access to that. We make it very simple with single sign-on, et cetera, to get into those technologies or those resources wherever they happen to be. And this works across the board for legacy applications, for client-server applications, for cloud-based applications, whatever you have within your infrastructure. And that's really what we do. We bring it all into one place and try and make it much more secure, but at the same time, easy for the end users.
Now, does multi-factor authentication eliminate the risk posed by employees using their personal devices for work, either remotely or locally? I talked to a lot of people about MFA this week, and if a password is one of your multi-factor authentications, right there you're weak, right? I mean, that's just what happens nowadays. People put terrible passwords in. So talk to me about that. I know it doesn't eliminate it, but does it make it more vulnerable in a way?
Well, multi-factor authentication is a really good idea because one of the things that you're doing is you're creating another hurdle, right? So if a hacker comes in, if one of the biggest attack vectors right now is people stealing credentials, whether they do it through phishing attacks, whether they do it through brute force attacks, dictionary attacks. There's lots of different ways that malicious actors can try to get actually valid credentials. And if they're using valid credentials to get in your organization, it's a real significant problem. That's where multi-factor authentication can come in. A multi-factor authentication can be a lot of different ways of doing it. It could be something like a push notification that goes to a device that you have to have in place. It could be a key fob, or a FIDO2 USB key that you have to put into the machine so that you can authenticate. There's lots of different ways that you can do it. It could be biometric. There are many different kinds of multi-factor authentication that you can put in place, and that will help to secure so that you're not just reliant on those credentials. But multi-factor authentication by itself still may not be enough. It helps without a doubt, and it's something that you should always, that organizations need to put in. Because if you're not using multi-factor authentication at a minimum today, you're really asking for trouble. You're really already probably going to be breached if it's just username and password that you're using out there. You probably have people inside your infrastructure already because it's too easy to compromise those credentials. Multi-factor helps, but it's also not, as I said, it's not really enough. With multi-factor authentication, you want to also take into account the context of access. Where is that person coming in from? What kind of device are they on? Domain joined? What's the security status of their device? A whole bunch of different things that you can take into account because things are very. If you're, for example, sitting in your corporate office on your managed corporate laptop and you've passed all the security checks that you normally would, you probably get access to everything you need to do to get to do your job, including sensitive information, et cetera. But if you take that same managed corporate device and you walk out to Starbucks around the corner, should you still get access to that sensitive information? That's a decision the company can make. But you may say that you only want access to that very sensitive information if the person is actually sitting in the office. And so multi-factor authentication is a good step, but it's not enough to be able to protect everything. You need to do quite a bit more when you're looking at the context that goes into that.
All right, fantastic perspective. Now, let's talk about segmentation. I know that's a key element of zero trust, but convince me how I can achieve that without re-architecting everything and changing my own infrastructure. It sounds like it might be a heavy lift, and I might be a little resistant to it. So convince me why it's not and why we should move this way.
So you're right. One of the biggest challenges is that when you're starting to look at trying to move to zero trust, you're trying to figure out a way for your organization to be able to make those steps. A lot of times when you're listening to different vendors, they'll talk about the fact you have to go out, you have to inventory everything you have to look at all the data that you have in different places, all the applications you have in different places, et cetera. And that can be a real daunting task. In fact, I've talked to organizations that have talked about the fact that we've been working on this for the last 3 years with a team of a lot of people that are out there working on this, and after several years they think they're making some progress. It's very complicated, right? It's very challenging in the organization. And during that time that you're doing the discovery phase, you're not actually making any progress towards securing your organization in a better way. What we do is total access control is designed to actually go into your existing infrastructure without changes. You don't have to change anything within the infrastructure. You don't have to redo any applications. You don't have to change your network. You don't have to put things in the cloud that weren't already in the cloud. You don't have to put in the new identity infrastructure. The idea is that you can put this in within your existing infrastructure and then over time move applications or user groups or whatever works for you in your organization over to full access control for getting access to those resources. And over time, at the pace of change your organization can manage, you get the chance to be able to move to a more secure zero trust architecture. And you can do it in the time that makes sense for your organization rather than trying to do it all at once, or do it in a way that you plan out every single thing first before you actually start to make the move. What we're saying is move it at the pace that you can change, but every step that you take is moving your organization to a more secure and segmented infrastructure. And one of the things when we talk about segmentation, you can do segmentation in a lot of different ways. You can do it at the network level. You can try to quarantine all of your different resources by doing it through the network. You could put a whole new network infrastructure. There are many companies that say, move it up to the cloud and put all your stuff in the cloud, and we'll segment it and do whatever for you up there. But many organizations can't do all that. They can't move it all to the cloud. They're going to be in a hybrid work state where you've got some cloud, some local. You've got things like legacy applications, which are very difficult to work with for most security products. But we've taken all those into account to try to make it so that it's comprehensive across the board, to bring all of those technologies and the access to those technologies into one place. And what happens is when you're getting access to resources through total access control, the only thing that you get access to is the resource itself, the application, for example. You're not getting access to the network, which is a big problem for most organizations. When you think about the technologies like VPNs, or even people walking in with their laptop and plugging into the local network, you're connecting to the network itself. And then you can then, kind of go out and get access to the resources that you want. But if it's a hacker that's doing that, or a malicious actor, and they're trying to get access under the traditional security that's been the castle and moat kind of architecture, there's no segmentation of resources for you to be able to create some kind of protection. So there's no guardrails. When you're inside the infrastructure, you then pivot and attack all kinds of things, and that's what hackers do, which is one of the reasons why we see so many breaches today, is that most organizations still have that castle and moat architecture. What we're talking about is segmentation of those resources, where you can only get access to the resources that you qualify for and nothing else. You're not just going direct to the network, you're going to those resources alone. And when you're done with that resource, or you try to break out of that resource, if you're a hacker, you're back at the portal and you're still secure. The organization's not, it's secure. And we've done a lot more on the front end to authenticate that user first before we get to that point.
Michael Oldham, CEO and founder of PortSys, Inc., portsys.com. Michael, you love this stuff, don't you? I can tell.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great place to be.
Well, and being a founder and CEO, you come at this from a different perspective. You have to love this to start a company. And I got to say, you kind of speak with this very mellow, authoritative vibe, right? That makes you feel like, hey, I'm going to be in good hands here if I talk to Michael. So congratulations on that, my friend. Good luck at Black Hat. Let me know what happens after the show. Maybe we'll do a post-show follow-up to see how the show went, and keep in touch. And I'll probably see you in Atlanta. So that calendar just came up. So go ahead and sign up for it if you're going to attend.
Great. Thanks very much, Chuck. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Talk to you later.